Hello and welcome to Practical Christian Lessons, and today we are talking about tattoos, self-laceration in the Old Testament. Let's get into it. Welcome to Practical Christian Lessons. I am Joshua Pearsall. If you're new here, we cover history, theology, apologetics, all of which are sort of wrapped up in this series, and so much more. We are continuing working through the Zondervan Archaeological Study Bible. If you want this one, it's important you look for the Archaeological Study Bible. The archaeology one is not the correct one. It's out of print, so it might be a little more pricey. We are continuing in our series, examining and comparing differences of the Old Testament history, laws, mainly the theology, with that of its neighbors, and showing how it is so different and unique. It can't have just been a simple evolution of thought around it, so we need to be able to account for it somehow. I'm going to say it is the divine revelation of God being given to a people, and them thus reacting to that revelation. If you wish to challenge that idea, welcome to the series. Watch these videos, catch up, leave some comments. We are talking about tattoos and self-laceration in ancient religion. So I imagine most people watching this are not watching it for the normal purpose of these videos. They're here because they want to talk about tattoos. Well, we're going to get into that. I'm not going to... Actually, I will probably speak a little bit to the debate myself, my own personal thoughts. But let's get through this essay first. This is Leviticus 19. This is page 180 of the Zondervan Archaeological Study Bible. In ancient pagan religions, tattooing was often thought to protect the individual so marked from harmful magic. Not something you generally hear when you hear about the tattoos in sermons and such. You'll generally hear about the ancestor worship, which comes up here, not the magic part. Some tattoos also indicated that a person belonged to a certain god or cult, analogous to the fact that slaves were often branded or tattooed. Right? So it wasn't just you're getting tattooed, you're signing you're getting your mark and devoting yourself. If you're choosing to have it done to you, not if it's done to you. The earliest evidence of tattooing in the ancient Near East comes from Neolithic fertility figurines discovered in Jordan. In Middle Kingdom Egypt, there's sort of several periods called the Kingdoms of Egypt. If you Google that, it should pop up if you're interested. Tattoos associated with Hathor, a fertility goddess, were discovered on the mummy of a priestess, as well as on figurines. These figurines, referred to as brides of the dead, linked sexuality with rebirth as a means of ensuring the resurrection of the dead. People in New Kingdom Egypt sported tattoos depicting Bes, a god of childbirth and the home. In Mesopotamia, temple slaves were often branded or tattooed with a symbol of the respective temples to which they belonged. Temple slavery is an interesting practice if you choose to look into that. Like tattooing, self-laceration in the ancient Near East was associated with death. Mesopotamian women slashed themselves as a sign of grief, and in the fertility cult of Baal, or Baal, self-laceration was associated with mourning for a deceased deity. Baal is one of the figures this series is sort of named after. Why the Bible and not the Baal cycle, or Baal? It seems likely that the biblical prohibition against tattoos and self-laceration for the dead in Leviticus 19:28, which I will read when we're done here, was directed against specific idolatrous practices, particularly erotic religious rites associated with the dead. The Old Testament treats tattooing and bodily disfigurement as inherently pagan and depraved. You can see also Deuteronomy 14:1 and 1 Kings 18:28. I'm just going to read Leviticus 19:28 here, which says, "Do not cut your bodies for the dead, or put tattoo marks on yourselves. I am the Lord." Anyone who's never heard of the big theological debate here is, can you get tattoos today as Christians? That shouldn't be a question because of the distinction of civil, moral, law, etc. If you don't know what that is, we're not going to get to that in this video. I recommend looking that up. There are plenty of, especially in the Reformed world, Anglicans, Methodists have written on this as well, the differences between the types of law, what is still applied to us today, what isn't. That tends to be far more important for these discussions, I find, than the question of the tattoo and the purpose. Me personally, I'm not going to get a tattoo because I hate needles. I despise them. And there's probably some phobia there. I'm not going to worry about it, though, because, every time I go get a shot, I just suffer through it. But that's why I won't get a tattoo, because I hate needles. And they just... Ugh. Anyway, here there is a clear condemnation. One of the things we get into in translating Hebrew to English is they didn't have the same markings we do, right? They don't have commas, they don't have periods, where you're separating points in the text, as we do in English with commas, periods, semicolons, etc. They don't have that in the Hebrew. So you have, at times, a difficulty in distinguishing where does a separation happen grammatically. And in this case, it wouldn't matter. Are the lacerations, right, do not cut yourself for the dead, and tattooing for a mark, are those tied together? Or are they two separate points of the structure? Because that would then play very differently into how we're understanding it. But again, it shouldn't really matter if you have a proper understanding of the civil, ceremonial, and moral law distinctions, because then this wouldn't matter at all. So yes, you can get tattoos. That is my answer put out to people. Anyone who wants to disagree with me and be like, oh, they're pagan. Well, if you're getting a tattoo for ancestor worship, for cultic practice, for any of the things mentioned in this, marking yourself as belonging to a deity or something like that, maybe that's a lesson in getting a name tattooed on yourself there. I don't know. But for the most part, tattoos are just fine. I'm not a priest. I'm working towards ordination, so take that into account when factoring how much you wish to weigh my opinion. But I am not there yet. I am working on education, so, let that sway you how it will. This is a short and sweet video for this, not something I have a ton of thoughts on. It seems pretty open and shut to me, as long as you have the appropriate theological approach to how we're understanding these laws. You should still be reading the laws if you're a Christian. There is a lot to learn from in the laws. I understand they can be hard, they can be boring. Talk to people in your community, talk to your pastor, talk to your priest, get good commentaries. There is a lot of value in those laws to learn from. The book of Leviticus, watch our video on food laws, and I'll get into this a bit more. That's something a lot of people are curious about as well in Leviticus 11. And Leviticus is like the linchpin of the Pentateuch, of the first 5 books of the Bible. It ties Exodus and Numbers together and is the center of the Pentateuch. Generally, especially in Hebrew literature, some things at the center, it generally is extremely important. Not always, but most times. So, Leviticus is a very important book. It is the holiness law code. When the Lord said, be perfect as I am perfect, be holy as I am holy, you are to be a nation of priests. Leviticus is how we do that. And so there's a lot to learn from it. You shouldn't just be looking at it as this law code that's boring, that's hard to get through. Why do these laws matter? You also need to be looking and digging into, why do these laws exist? What are they attacking? What are they protecting from? What are they saying about these people? What is the difference? Actually, a great commentary, and I'll have more linked below. I've been doing this quite a bit with the Leviticus video, so you probably see the same pinned comment. This is one I've been enjoying, teaching Leviticus, and I'll have some other commentaries that really walk through and help you break down, what are these laws, right? What is it? What's the purpose? What's the point? What are they telling the people? And that is one of the hardest things to deal with in Leviticus, because it is a bunch of law codes. It can be really difficult to really get yourself into, and I understand that. There are days I love reading Leviticus, and then there are days where I'm sitting there like this, being like, why am I doing this? It depends on the day. But look into those things. Get yourself some good resources on Leviticus. You guys have a wonderful day, and God bless.